Hi guys, I am Trevor, and I'm going to talk about how to successfully and effectively fundraise. And if you guys don't know, I am the lead marketer of FTC currently, and currently of FTC Team One Byte. And I'm here to talk about fundraise. This is a great opportunity because I used to do fundraising. This is how I kind of started off in the team. The first real thing that I ended up doing was, or the first major thing that I ended up doing to kind of solidify my part of the team was I did a fundraiser in which I was able to. It was pretty good. We got a modest profit from it, and that was kind of how I started off. And so there's two kind of fundraisings that I would like to talk about when in the context of FTC. This is what I've seen most teams do and how our teams have done it, is we can do it through sponsorships or through fundraising events. I'm going to mostly talk about fundraising events, but sponsorships is definitely a good method of fundraising because a sponsorship is basically um, when a business gives money or resources to a nonprofit event or program in exchange for promotional benefits. The companies that sponsor your team may be local or global in scale, but think about the companies that may want to sponsor a local robot team. When you think about this, um, a lot of local companies sponsor a lot of sports. If you guys have gone to a local restaurant in your area, and you might see like a poster or something promotional from a swim team, or maybe the football team or the cheerleaders or something, volleyball team maybe. That's definitely a sponsorship. And that's kind of a way that you can give them benefits. They can be on your jerseys. You can give them posters of you guys that they can put in their local business, to which it kind of shows to others who enter in that they sponsor like local programs. And it's really good because robotics is a very unique program. Oftentimes it's very much sports programs and events that get a lot of sponsorships, and so robotics can be like a nice change of pace. It shows STEM. It's a great idea for companies to sponsor robotics teams. And I would strongly suggest looking more into sponsorships and create a tier list and other ways you can get sponsorship money from other businesses. Definitely reach out to businesses to do that. The one I'm talking about will be fundraising events. I don't have much experience doing sponsorships, so I'm mostly just going to talk about fundraising events. It's basically an event where a nonprofit or charity sells a product or service. Now, what's a product or service? Oops. Basically, a product is something tangible. It's a tangible product to the consumer, while a service is selling expertise or time. And the example that I've shown, this is an example of a robotics fundraiser where we um, allowed the customer to drive our robot for $1 a minute. So if they wanted to drive a robot for 5 minutes, that would be $5. And it would be a great for the us because we wouldn't have to spend anything. We would just need to take our FTC field and our robot and bring it to an event. And this wasn't our best fundraiser. We didn't raise much, and it was a lot of time spent, and we didn't get a lot out of it. It might be because, as shown, the posters may have been printed in black and white because like the printers had trouble with colors. And as you can see in black and white, the posters didn't look as good, and that was kind of my reaction to seeing these posters. Was I was not very pleased with how they ended up because these are posters that I created for this event, but that's fine. That might have been a reason why we didn't do as well because we weren't able to advertise as much. But there's a bunch of other things I'm going to talk about. Um, Most fundraisers we've done, we've sold a product. It's just this one where we offered the consumers to drive it. So here's a timeline for fundraising events on a normal schedule. The one that I did, we only had it 1 week, and that's a lot different from the 2 weeks that I show here. And as you can see, 2 weeks before you plan before you do an event, you should probably plan on what you're going to sell, where and when. So let's say you're going to sell cookies, and where are you going to sell those cookies? Let's say it's outside in your school parking lot. And when, let's say after school releases or during a major event that happens after school hours or something. That's one way. Then there's 1 week before. You should plan out more details, get more specific, like who's going to bring what, who's going to do what, who's going to be in charge of the money, who's going to bring the table with stuff needed, like spoons, if there's going to be anything that would require you to need a spoon to eat, or yeah. Once you get those stuff out, 5 days before the event, you should probably have posters and media up around the school so everyone knows that you guys will be there for the event. It's a great way for you guys to advertise, even if most people won't notice it, it's still a great idea, and it's still good for those who do notice it. It's always a good thing in the long run to have good posters and media to have. 3 days before the event, the posters should be placed if they aren't already. Details also need to be confirmed, like confirm with people if they are bringing something. Make sure that they have that thing or they can get that thing, and make sure that they can bring it the day of the event. Make sure whoever is doing something, they know what they're going to do, and they know when they're supposed to be there for the event. Then 1 day before your event, I guess just prepare, get as ready as you can be, because you got to get ready the next day, and that's going to be a lot of fun, but it's often kind of, it can be very stressful for a lot of people. It's stressful for me when I did fundraisers. It still is. As you can see, there's a big emphasis on preparing an idea, because if your idea isn't solid, it's more likely it's not going to sell as well, and you're not going to get as much profit. The more you think about how to prepare for this idea, to have like a concept going into this, the better it's going to be. That's why I gave you guys like a whole week to do that. You don't really have to be doing it for like a whole week, but it is a good idea to do that. Now, event management. Often in the past, I have been in charge of managing a lot of our fundraisers, but if I'm not there for the event, you're going to need someone who can manage it, and you need someone who's going to assign roles, and tasks, and someone who's going to really command others. It's not necessarily about being the boss, but being like the leader, taking charge, and having someone who can just manage it all. I've done this for Wilson Elementary, which is an elementary school where we did a robotics event. And what I had to do was I basically made sure everything was going on schedule, and we had everything prepared, and everyone was doing their assigned roles, and everyone was there and contributing. That's just something you need to be aware of. You need to be able to make quick decisions. Oftentimes, you gotta make it in the spur of the moment, even though you don't know any details or anything. You just have to make a decision. Here's a photo of one of our events. We sold crepes, and we were in the school's cafeteria, then the place where they make the food. I'm trying to think of the word, but we were in the kitchen, basically, and we were selling it out, and we had syrup and everything, and we were handing out crepes to our customers. Here's just a few of the people here who are working. As you can see, there's people back who are making it, and there are people who are keeping track of our sales and keeping track of the money, and people who are giving out the crepes, and that is your job as event manager, basically. Now, okay, I've already said this, but it applies to any event, and one is Wilson Elementary, where I was the event manager for that event. It was me, and after a while, it can be very stressful at first, but once you get into the flow of things, it can be a lot easier, and it'll be fine. It can be stressful to manage an event, but it's something that's totally manageable, and you can totally do it. Yeah, here's actually some of the digital media that we made for the event. And here are two of the marketers who were there for the event, and I appreciate everyone who attended that event. Now, here's coming up with ideas for fundraiser can be hard, and that's kind of what I want to emphasize in this presentation because this is the most important part. If your idea isn't solid, it's most likely your fundraiser isn't going to do as well. Now, the where and the when in a fundraiser. Every successful fundraiser has been that we have done has been on an important event. Here we did our fundraiser. We were selling snow cones, and we did it outside after an event during an event that had happened where all of the school was basically outside and they were watching. I wasn't there for the event. I was in band, unfortunately, but there was a game going on, and we had the seniors going up against our teachers, and it was a lot of fun. And we were there selling popsicle or snow cones, and it was very hot outside. And I think we got a lot of sales from that event because of how hot it was, and that we were outside, and everyone was already there already, and it really is perfect timing if you sell something that is hot outside in the summer and sell something like a cold drink. Sorry, if you sell a cold drink outside and it's in the summer, while serving something hot or warm during the winter, like hot chocolate. That's just an idea. Now here's another table that I made for a presentation that I made. This was to my teacher, and I was looking at what we could sell for an event that we were doing, and so I took into account the cost of the materials and how much we're going to make in a batch, the price for the estimated thing that we're making, and then the profit per batch, basically. And so our first one is Spritz. Spritz are Spritz cookies. They're little small cookies, about this big, and it costs about $10 to make a batch. I make them every Christmas. I make about 2 batches with my family because it's a fun thing that we like to do, and that makes about 80 cookies. And when you do all the math, you'll get eventually, if you sell them for 3 for 1, you're going to get $17 profit. It's something you want to take into account, like how much profit you're getting per event. If it costs a lot to make something, is it going to be worth it in the long run? What if you don't sell enough? If you don't sell enough, then that material cost is going to be a lot on you. And we did popcorn, and we also did hot chocolate, which hot chocolate definitely costs more. It's definitely worth it though because it tastes good and a lot of people like to buy it, especially if it's cold outside. Now, when selling something, you should think about what the consumers are thinking. Like, what are they seeing? If you are at an event and this event is kind of like a festival, and you already bring money because a lot of stuff there already costs money, and so in advance you already bring money. And knowing that as a marketer, as someone who was going to be there for this event, I already knew people were going to bring money. So what's something we could sell that people would want? Well, this was hot. It was hot outside. It was summer, and it probably wasn't that hot now that I think about it, but it was still pretty warm outside, and people were getting ready for the summer that was going to come, and it was a lot of fun activities you can do, and you could also buy food and stuff. And we were there selling desserts. There were We sold snow cones and pies, and the good thing about the pies was that they were easy to make and they were cheap, which were two things that we would like to emphasize. If you're going to sell something, make sure it's easy to make and it's cheap, because then once you sell it, you're more likely to get more benefit out of a fundraiser if it's like something quick you do, basically. And this was our most successful event by far. We got about $400. That was maybe 500, but either way, it was a lot for us, and it was a small thing that we did. And it was very successful because people were already bringing money, and there were already a lot of people coming. A lot of parents, younger kids, a lot of younger siblings that we weren't actually expecting to be there, and a lot of younger siblings love sugar and candy and stuff, and so they would love to buy our snow cones and pies. And that was a very successful fundraiser, and I think that was one of our best ones. Then I also like think about if you're going to be selling crepes, how many people know what crepes are? And if you're selling them, let's go back to the photo. I don't mean to. This it wasn't a bad fundraiser. I think that we had a lot going for that one, but it was something that needed to be worked on, and that's totally fine. It was our first. It was a pretty big fundraiser that we haven't really gotten used to doing fundraisers. We didn't do many at this time, and so we were just kind of throwing ideas out there to do something. And what we sold were crepes, but it would have been better to market them as pancakes because they were more pancake looking, as you can see down here. And we had whipped cream and everything. And it'd be easier to market something as pancakes compared to crepes because crepes aren't like a popular delicacy here in America. We prefer pancakes and waffles and all these other stuff. But if you want to sell crepes, that's fine. Just know that's a bit more niche than pancakes. It's a bit more specific, and we need something that a lot of people already know of, like snow cones or pies. Now, also make sure to think about like the weather, and when in all events that happen outside, prepare for the possibility of rain or something to happen because there might be something to happen and that's going to be unfortunate, but you need to be ready. Just know if you're going to do something outside. Now, think about the time spent. When you do a fundraiser, you want to get the most profit off of it because you're running a team. That's the whole focus. You want to run a robotics team. If you spend too much time on a fundraiser, not a lot of people are going to have time for a robotics to build on the robot. And that's kind of a thing where a lot of fundraisers need to be given to the marketers to do because engineers and programmers need to focus on the robot. And if they have to spend their time on a fundraiser, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to do something like that. You need to spend your time wisely when doing a fundraiser. If you do, say for example, a cookie fundraiser, and parents and let's say the students or their parents are making the cookies and they're basically giving it to the robotics organization, the team, to sell off, and that's a fundraiser. That was the first major one that I did, where everyone kind of made their own kind of cookies, and we all kind of sold it to the to our consumers, to the school, and we didn't worry about material costs because the parents were going to buy this stuff for us, or we were going to buy it, or the students were going to buy it, and so we didn't have to worry about the cost, and that was a great thing about that fundraiser. The cost was kept low because a lot of parents were helping out. But if you think about how much time it spends to make cookies, even just like simple spritz cookies, it's still a lot. And we had a lot of engineer and programmer participation, and we had a lot of participation on other things as well, like preparing for the event and managing it and getting other supplies. And all this time spent, is it going to be worth it in the long run for just a few quick bucks? That's why sponsorships can be a preferred method of fundraising, because you just have to call up a company and basically ask for money, beg for money. It's pretty close to begging for money. Sponsorships are borderline begging for money, and that's just something that it's worth doing because a lot of times companies are willing to hand out more money than maybe you'd make in a fundraiser, and that may be preferred, but also you got to keep into account what the judges might think. a lot of judges, when they look at the FTC portfolio, which is something that if you are new to FTC, you're basically going to have to make a portfolio of all that you have done this year and put it together so that you guys can show the judges everything that you guys have done. If you guys did fundraisers, it's good to put that in there. Whereas sponsorships, you're just calling up a company, and judges aren't going to take note to that as much as, say, you did a fundraiser at your school, or you did an event for an elementary school, and you gotta take into account the benefits and the negatives of fundraisers and sponsorships. It can be both have their benefits, and both also have their negatives, and there's both. Fundraising can be very easy or can be very complicated depending on how you take it. Now let's go to the flag. This is the last bit of our presentation, and I just want to talk about how after you do a fundraiser, you should reflect on how it went. For me, I remember the day after the fundraiser, not the day after, the first major fundraiser was the cookie sale, and that was the last fundraiser until the last day of school, until winter break. And so there was a whole month after that fundraiser where most people didn't even know like our profit from that event. I did because I counted the money at the end, but most people didn't know how it went, what happened. Some people didn't weren't able to make it, and so like what happened. And after that whole presented to our mentors about how it went, and we talked about how what went well, what went wrong. Was it successful? In the end, our first one for me was basically our second fundraiser that we have done in FTC, and our first one was back a year ago, and so back when we first started. And so this was kind of like getting the ball rolling, kind of getting started on making fundraisers and everything. And once we got that ball rolling, I think that was our first fundraiser that led to our crepes, that led to the outdoor one right here where we sold snow cones and pies, that led to our doing another snow cone fundraiser. And I think we're going to keep that ball rolling. And I think that was a good way to reflect and see. But there was also a lot of negatives. I remember we spent a lot of time on it, and a lot of people, parents ended up having to spend their own money on it, which I don't know if that was fine, but we didn't want to keep doing the same fundraiser and keep making parents spend their own money on cookies, because that's not what we wanted to do as an FTC team. But there was a lot of positives that came out of that event. And I remember presenting afterwards to our teachers, our marketing mentor, and then we talked about what's next. And that is by far the most important part of the reflection. What are you going to do after this? And like, what fundraiser are you going to do, basically? After that, we were like, we need to do more fundraisers that we spend less time on and less material on. We need to maximize our amount of profit while spending the least amount of time and the least amount of money. And I think that's what kind of started the crepe fundraiser. That's my idea going into our next fundraiser, and that's what I wanted to emphasize the next time when we discussed the crepe fundraiser. Even though that wasn't our best fundraiser, we didn't spend too much time on it, and we didn't have to spend too much money, which is what made that fundraiser. It wasn't that half as bad of a fundraiser as it could have been if we spent so much money or time on it. And that's what I would like to end this presentation on. I think this is it. Oh yeah, here's the posters that I did for our first. Okay. So for one of our the one the fundraising event that occurred before, like right when I joined. That was like the week of that I joined. These are the two posters that I had to create, and I don't think these are the best ones now, but I still think that posters are an important part of the fundraising process if you want people to know about it, and it's a good way if you want to send those posters onto Instagram and social media for other people to see, such as we have a lot of people on who follow us on Instagram who are in our school, and that's how we were able to get a lot of attention if we did that. And here's the planning. This was the first major fundraiser that I did, the one where I eventually got known in FTC, was this fundraiser right here where, that's funny. That's weird. Okay. Where I got started basically, and I'll just go through it really quickly. And basically, I wanted to talk about different ideas that I had, like maybe we could do a poster where they could like tear off a piece and that could benefit them in the long run. Yeah, I also talked about how to create it down here. And then I even ended up making a poster for that cookie sale. It didn't end up working. A lot of people didn't care for that idea, especially because they kind of they didn't it wasn't a good idea in the long run, but that was fine. It still was a nice addition, even though it didn't end up working. It was a good idea to try it. We never ended up trying this, but here was more ideas. What are we going to sell? Where and when? These are the exact stuff that I'm talking about in my presentation, and I'm talking about it here. And I even talked about a schedule. Remember, I made this presentation Sunday, and the event was going to be Friday, so I had a week to end up pulling this off with other marketers and other people on our FTC team. Talk about other idea for sponsors. This is unrelated to that fundraising event, mostly. But I had a bunch of ideas, and I made sure to present it. And it's good always to present your ideas to the team. And even if people don't care for half of it, at least if you have one good idea at the end of the day, I think that's all makes it all worth it. I think that's it for my presentation. Thank you guys for watching.